Hey everyone, it feels like a Friday, but it's only Thursday. It is the 6th of July, 2023, and we have UX Research Call number 23. This one is focused on Payjoin and pretty much handing it over to Yashraj and Dan because they're going to be leading this conversation. I'm just here to ask questions. Yashraj did a case study, which is now in the Bitcoin Design Guide. It's a Payjoin case study. And Dan is the Payjoin, I would say, the technical guy in terms of Payjoin. I don't know how you guys want to do it. Maybe Dan can give us a bit of a walkthrough around Payjoin, and then Yashraj can present his case study to us. Sounds good, Christoph.
Yeah, before anyone jumps in, I just want to say that Dan is the guy for Payjoin.
The guy, okay.
He's the guy. Yeah.
The guy, okay. Dan, you are
That,
the guy. So,
that's why I'm here. If we want to go to the ancients, you got to go talk to Andrew Camilleri and Nicolas Boyer from BTC Pay. So, yeah, I'm Dan. I've been working on Payjoin for a few years now. The way I see Payjoin is as a system to solve Bitcoin privacy rather than an application. So I think everyone here knows the basics of Bitcoin privacy, to hold your own keys, don't reuse addresses, broadcast your transactions over Tor, and sync your own balance rather than going to someone like Infura to get your balance. I know, Mo, we've talked about Payjoin before. Tykenberg, Michael, Pleb Poet, have you guys, who has heard an explanation of Payjoin before, or who has not heard an explanation of Payjoin?
I'm interested to hear an explanation. I was just looking at the BIP 78. Yeah, I'd be curious to learn more.
I read the Payjoin case study that we have, I think, on the design guide, right? Or is it how it works? No, I think it's a case study. So, and that's probably the exposure I had so far.
Okay, good. So we have some exposure. We've done our homework, it sounds like. I'm trying to share a Firefox screen right now. I don't know if this is going to come up or not. I don't think it did. So the best place to start is payjoin.org. Payjoin.org aims to be a sort of explainer about problem, solution, and we've got an awesome demo too that Yashraj put together from when he did the UI research kit. He put together some mockups combined with BTC Pay Server. You can click through and see what a Payjoin actually does. So taking a step back, let's start with the problem. So even if you use Bitcoin privacy best practices today, you still have limitations, which are there are people that are spying on the blockchain who can use heuristics, who can use guesses about how most wallets work to track your activity across the chain. One of the main ones is one Satoshi left in the white paper, where he said, transactions with multiple inputs, quote, necessarily reveal that their inputs were owned by the same owner, end quote. And that means if you want to, so Bitcoin is not stored in accounts, it's stored in transaction outputs. And if you want to spend an amount more than one transaction output, you need to combine them in the inputs of a transaction. We can break that assumption by having multiple people contribute inputs to one transaction. But to do that, we need some sort of communication. In the past, that's been done with some on-chain coordination at times, or with a centralized coordinator, as in CoinJoin. But Payjoin lets the sender and receiver find each other peer-to-peer. It works within the BIP21 unified URI, so your standard QR codes or your standard payment strings that would support Lightning and on-chain. And that means the payment flow doesn't get disrupted. So the reason I bring that up is in contrast to things like mixers or CoinJoin, where you take a separate step to preserve your privacy. Payjoin is all about combining multiple people's actions in one transaction at the time they would otherwise take a transaction. So there's no interruption. And because of this, you get consolidation. So because both sender and receiver are adding inputs, you're really taking both the payment and a consolidation you would do later at the same time. And that batching is what gives you a transaction that looks like consolidations that Bitcoin Core might make, and it doesn't look like two people necessarily participated together. So we've broken the heuristic. We've done multiple transactions batched in one, which lets us save money. And it works in the same sort of experience that we're already accustomed to as long as we're online. That's really the gist. I'd like to open it up for questions because I think answering individual questions is probably going to be more helpful than continuing to, say what I think of Payjoin. If you wanted to watch a sort of FAQ about it, I just did a podcast with Marty Bent. So TFTC, you can look up Dan Gould and you'll find the Payjoin episode. Does anyone have questions?
I do. And I thank you for the explanation. So what you get at the end of a Payjoin is a consolidation of a transaction ID plus UTXOs.
So you get a regular transaction at the end of a Payjoin. Most Bitcoin transactions, your wallet is going to make on its own. A Payjoin lets multiple wallets communicate to build a transaction together. And in doing so, you can have a better outcome by batching multiple actions that both wallets want to take and combining them into a single transaction. So it's really a settlement. It's an on-chain settlement like opening a Lightning channel or just sending a regular on-chain Bitcoin payment.
Yeah. Okay. But then afterwards, sorry, I think I was reading before about a UTXO consolidation also happens, or is that different?
No, that's right. That's
Okay.
right. So I think the way to think about this is by first taking a regular Bitcoin transaction in isolation, the simplest of which would be where you have, one old transaction output paying someone and making change. So if Hal Finney has 50 Bitcoin if Satoshi has 50 Bitcoin they mined and wants to send it to Hal Finney, wants to send 10 Bitcoin to Hal Finney, he's going to create a transaction with 50 Bitcoin as the input from mining, 10 Bitcoin as output to Hal Finney, and 40 Bitcoin as change. If Hal has some other Bitcoin that he wants to spend, say he wants to make a 60 Bitcoin payment, he would need to combine the 10 Bitcoin he got with other Bitcoin he has. So instead of doing that, he can actually use the other Bitcoin he has as input to the transaction Satoshi sent him, if they're using Payjoin, and create that 60 Bitcoin output straight away. And by doing that, he can combine the two transactions or three transactions. He can combine the consolidation with the payment reducing the total amount of data he'd have to post on chain. So when we consolidate, we're making another transaction to merge our UTXOs together. And if we can do that at the same time as a payment transaction, we don't have to repeat the overhead of the transaction, the sort of boilerplate template that's required for every single transaction. So there's a fee savings associated with that. Do you have any other questions? If that's could be clarified, I'd like to clarify.
No, that's good. Thank you. I wanted like a deeper understanding of what the UTXOs are merging together, and that makes sense. And I think about them as like change, and like, so when you're saying it helps with the fees overhead, that makes sense.
Okay, good.
Dan, I have a question. I don't know if now is an appropriate time to answer it, but you be the judge on when it's best to answer. And it has to do with the issue with the unnecessary input heuristic. Could you explain that concept specifically as it has to do with Payjoin transactions?
Yeah. So first, I'll explain what unnecessary input heuristic is, which is typical transactions, like the example I gave where Satoshi is paying Hal Finney. The input is strictly necessary in order to create the output. So if that, because there's only one input of 50, there's an output of 10 and an output of 40. There's no way to create an output of 10 or an output of 40 without that input of 50 because there's no other input. But if you had another input of 80 and a change for the same amount, then that transaction input would be said to be unnecessary because you can still create the 10 input without including it. So these transactions are trivial to pick out of all of the transactions in Bitcoin. And because Payjoin does this consolidation and the payment at the same time, it always conforms to unnecessary input heuristic. You're always creating an input. Sorry, you're always creating an output that could be created with one of the inputs or a subset of inputs. So there are actually two categories of unnecessary input heuristic still. One where you can identify which is change and which is the payment, and one where you cannot. And you have to select, the receiver has to select coins carefully in order to avoid the type where you know what change is. Otherwise, it doesn't look like consolidation transactions that are unnecessary input heuristic that Bitcoin Core would otherwise make. So some wallets create these unnecessary input heuristic transactions when they do consolidations automatically, when the fee rate is low. But if you don't conform to the heuristic in the same way that common software does, it's easy to pick out, oh, that transaction could be a Payjoin. It's not perfect. There's still a lot of software that does these consolidations that conform to either type of heuristic, but this is the general idea, is there's sort of a shape of transactions that are typical when you're doing consolidations. And for Payjoin to have good privacy properties, it should be indistinguishable from those typical transactions. There's a really good paper if you want to dive deeper called Unnecessary Input Heuristics and Payjoin Transactions that came out in 2020. And I definitely recommend you read that if you want to take a deep dive. I probably should summarize that at some point too, because it's technical, and I think, I hope this answers your question. I don't think it's necessarily easy to parse out. It needs to be explained in plain English.
Yeah, it does. I think one thing that is clear to me, and I think it's also something that might be contributed to in the conversation around Payjoins, is that it is totally optional for the receiver to contribute inputs to the transaction. So, like you mentioned, if the receiver does not have any inputs, that would avoid a situation where you have an unnecessary input heuristic, then it should be optional, and maybe the receiver doesn't need to contribute any inputs to that transaction. I don't know if this is something that the Payjoin development kit is also designed to do, where in trying to determine if a receiver should contribute inputs, if it notices that there are no inputs that would avoid an unnecessary input, then it wouldn't just suggest that maybe attempts to make Payjoin fail. Just curious to know.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. So that's how BTC Pay Server works, and Payjoin Dev Kit exposes I think it's called try contributing input function, and you pass a list of your UTXOs, and it finds one that's suitable for the transaction or returns an error. And if it returns an error, you can just, you can take the fallback transaction from the Payjoin, and you don't worry about creating a potentially identifiable transaction.
And Dan, one question for me is the research that Yashraj did, was that some of the first research that has been done on Payjoin implementations, or has there also been other research that's been done?
So there has been academic research, but Yashraj was definitely the first design research, especially formal design research. If you
Mm-hmm.
talk to any of the guys at BTC Pay Server, they all know there's a UX problem, but they don't know what it is. So yeah, it was the first design research.
Okay. Do you guys want to dive into the research that Yashraj did, or do you guys still want to ask some more questions to Dan? We can go in either direction.
Let's go, Yashraj.
Yeah, I
You have a
I
question?
just I realized that I need to reread that case study, but I think I'm kind of following, so not too many questions for me, but so far it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I just want to like quickly jump in and connect like the last 20 minutes of the call to like what I was doing. Basically, my research process was like having a lot of such conversations with Dan, where I was barely following things and like I was trying to make sense of it. uh, how does bit 78 work, and like I can like share my screen and like show that in my mind how like the process and like basically the track of like insights and like and learnings that I went through in order to like do the research. I can quickly jump into that. So, okay, let's see if I can share my screen. Okay, yeah, awesome. So, yeah, are you folks able to see the deck?
Yep, seeing it.
Yeah, right. And so, this was basically the process that 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 I took for initially the design challenge that Dan had posted on the Bitcoin design website. That like got me obsessed with like everything related to like these things, Payjoin, the UTXO model, heuristics, PSBT. Like it was like a basically like a rabbit hole, and this slide that you folks can see, like I put it together after I did the case study, right? In some ways, like I was like learning my way through what was happening, and after the case study, I was able to like distill that and like distill how how exactly the case study and the research in general came about based on this. And I mean, feel free to like read the contents, and if you have any specific questions, I am very happy to try and answer them.
Could you explain this diagram a little bit more to us, Yashraj? Because you have this. It seems like you, if I understand correctly, you first went through this learning phase of going down the rabbit hole, asking Dan a lot of questions, trying to
Yeah.
understand what
Yes.
Payjoin is.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. So I think I think it is kind of obvious, but it might not be obvious as well that like this, like you are like supposed to read this from the bottom to the top, right? Because that's like how the learning process and the research process went, right? So just to like basically summarize it, I I like dug into BIP 78. I tried to understand what the UTX model was, how it worked, how like Payjoin affects that, what is the uh, what is the heuristic, and it's like multiple heuristic as we just talked about. What is a PSBT and like how is it supposed to work, and PSBT, like like it immediately reminds us of like signing a transaction from hardware device, and that like can create like a UX hurdle, or it might impose requirements on the users, things like that. So like it was like through understanding some of the fundamentals of this, because when I like came to the page joint technical requirements, that's like the bottom right, and like you have a set of requirements for the sender and the receiver as it is right now. I know that Dan and some other people are like working on some like exciting things when it comes to that. There are a bunch of requirements right now to like do to like have a setup and successfully do a joint transaction. Um, I can quickly go into that. Let's see. Mm,
And does anyone have any questions for Yashraj? Feel
yeah.
free to just ask any questions.
Yes. Just like feel free to interrupt me at any point in time and just like jump into the questions. But
How
I
would you
can.
describe
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
scope of the design study, and where do you think the next steps or kind of the close
Mhm.
wins for Payjoin design are?
Right. So that is a great question, right? Because it has it is definitely like my learning is evolving. The Payjoin ecosystem and the implementations, like everything is evolving at the same time, right? But I think one quick win that I think I might that we might be able to have is that if we look at this the etc pay server receiver analysis, uh, we basically found out that uh, the the setup of the receiver, like setting up to receive a join, that is not a one step process, and there are like some other limitations that we have. Like for example, you need a hot wallet, for example, to be able to sign the Payjoin transaction as a receiver, right? And so many people use BTC Pay server, but they only use a cold wallet. And so if uh, r- uh, right now I think I hope I'm not wrong, I'll be happy to be corrected on this, but uh, if I don't have a hot wallet, I don't even see the pay join options, right? And I'm not sure like that is the way it should be. It could be something like in the settings you have a pay join section, and we allow the user to enable page join, and then in the background we do everything that we can to make sure that uh, the user is like ready to receive a page join. So for example, if they don't have a hot wallet, create a hot wallet for them, right? The endpoint is launched automatically and enable Payjoin. That is awesome. But we, at least like right now, we not just need a hot wallet, which we may not have, but even if we have a hot wallet, you need to have funds in it, right? And so when I create a hot wallet from scratch, it is going to be empty, right? And there are not going to be any UTXOs in it. And so this is like trying to take a more holistic approach to the UX itself, and make sure that the etc pace server like takes actions in a proactive way, and they like have a better process and some better options to to enable receiving a join, because uh, one of the one of the insights and the amazing things from the etc pace server analysis was that once the setup is done, uh, page join receiving can be effortless, like from the user perspective. Like whenever we detect a page join, we just contribute an input of the right size and everything and just sign it. And so for the user, they do not necessarily have to do something. And so like that is what I feel like might be an easy win for like a UX perspective.
Yashraj, do you have any of those? I think you did. You take you. I'm sure you took screenshots
Yeah,
of the research. Do
yeah.
you, if you have them like near you or you know where they are, it would be nice to share them and with the group as an example of what you meant by that as being maybe a design solution or an improvement.
Mhm. Yeah, so let me just try and find it. So basically, if you are in the case study, uh, I think the case study content is one thing, but also we have like a lot of other documents that are basically linked to that. You know, so if I here right now, I'm assuming that all of you are able to see my screen basically. Um, yeah. So there are a couple of ways of entering this, right? So one of the awesome things is that if you are setting up a hot wallet in etc pace server, it will ask you if you want to enable Payjoin. So that is awesome, right? So it's something that the user is presented with, and it is enabled by default. So this is great. uh, some of the other stuff is like, for example, here I was like talking about receiving a join being effortless. So if a join is enabled, and somebody is trying to pay a merchant, and they see something like this, and a page on link with us, sorry, basically the payment link with the page on support is uh, is presented, and the receiver has not had to do something specific to like request a page join. So we are like thinking about, I'm trying to think about like a merchant doing maybe dozens of transactions a day, right? And so like the process of contributing an input and signing and like all of that has to be automated for it to be like a seamless experience. uh, I am looking for something else as well. I'm not sure if it's here. Okay, let's try this thing. Da. Is it here? Yeah. Okay, let's see if I'm able to log in here. Um, yeah. So Are you folks able to see my screen right now? I'm in the PTC Pay server.
Yep, we see it.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so this is basically what I was saying, that even if I already have a hot uh, wallet and Payjoin is not enabled, uh, I like have this toggle here, and I can simply enable it, right? And in my mind, it's like done. Payjoin is enabled, right? But the fact of the matter is that Payjoin might be enabled. So what this toggle does is that it basically it lets me
Has the audio broken up for anyone, or is it just me?
No, I hear you perfectly.
Okay, so
Yeah,
Yashraj,
Yashraj audio
no.
gone.
All right, let's give it some time.
I can't see anything. Yeah, are you guys able to hear me? Yeah, yeah. So
Yes.
yeah, I was on the other screen, so I could not see. All right. So coming back to this toggle here, right? And so from the user perspective, who may or may not know anything about Payjoin, as soon as they switch the toggle on, they are like, hey, Payjoin is enabled. But if the hot wallet is empty, the pay joins will not happen, right? And so it's like this. Uh, it was like this insight for me that it's not as simple as enabling a toggle. And like, if I'm not wrong, I don't even see this if I don't have a hot wallet already. And I think the default is to have a cold wallet in PTC Pay, right? And so I have a discovery problem, and then I have this another issue wherein I might be confused that hey, I did enable the page on toggle, but it doesn't look like I'm doing page ons, right? So that was like some of the insights, and like these seem like comparatively easy issues to solve. They don't seem to be like especially difficult, especially from a UX perspective, right? And I think I just want to like tie it off with like, if this is the issue, what could the solution be like? Like, what could be the user flow be like, right? And that brings us to what we did here.
Yashraj, I don't know if it's just on my end, but your audio is just a little bit far away. I
Oh,
don't know if anyone else has that. I have to really concentrate it to. It's just a little bit far away. I don't know. Is it just my audio, or is it the same?
The same.
oh, it's the same for everyone. Yeah. I mean, so if you did not understand something that like I was talking about, please like ask me about it again. Uh, I I've been like accused of being distant, but I'm pretty close to the laptop right now. So, uh, so if there was like something unclear that I said, I think it's important just like ask me.
If it's possible to increase your audio at all, it would be amazing. But if not, yeah.
Yeah, so I can try to talk at a higher volume. I can try that, and I can like move close to my laptop, I guess. But yeah, I think we are
Could be
probably.
a different microphone than what you originally had, maybe.
Um, I don't think so. Like I'm trying to use my like my regular microphone. I don't know what's happening, but how can I solve it?
No, his AirPods are connected.
How about this now?
Much better.
Much better, yeah.
Oh, it's much better. I think like Dan and I think that it usually works the other way, But yeah, if this helps, it's awesome. Is there something like you want me to go back to in terms of like talking about the etc pay side of things or something?
I'm interested in, like, there's a
Yeah,
lot of design folks here. I'm interested in
yeah,
maybe where you see if they wanted to look into this problem more, what are kind of the open-ended things? I see this BTC pay issue is something that, one could go to Cooks and Nicholas and figure out, and Pavlinex, I'm sure. But what are the other issues? Some of the ones I've noticed are there's no how it works section for Payjoin, and I don't know if the wallet UI kit supports it yet. I wonder if there's anything else that you've looked forward in the design space for Payjoin outside of the findings in the research, or that maybe the research shined a light on that you think people should look at.
yeah. So yeah, that is a great question, right? I think so. In my mind, it's like been a continuous journey for like since like last year in December, or I think something like that. I have been learning more and more about more and more about Payjoin, and like learning more and more about how the UX might have to look like. One area that I can think of right now is like it comes to this basically, right? So I am trying to send a Payjoin, right? And we like have these mockups here, and it's not a difficult process. It is very similar to the process that you usually have, uh, and that is it, right? But I think Dan, you and I have like talked about it quite a bit. Is that there is a big use case or a big set of use cases where the receiver can contribute to fees, right? So they can basically they can contribute a lot of inputs, and so that like increases the transaction size, and to make sure that it confirms and everything. And the to like do that, they contribute to fees, and they want to contribute to fees. And I think right now I'm not sure how the fee calculation logic is, or like how the UX is. We are able to see it like right here, and when I see this fee section, it might have to change from uh, how much is the fee that I as a sender I'm paying for, and the receiver on their end, they can maybe see something similar, that this is the fee that I paid for, and then the total fee of the transaction, of course, is the sum of that, right? And so if like there is a calculation logic, I'm not sure what it is. So like it has to be not outputs minus inputs, but it has to be my inputs and like my outputs, right? And so that is the fee that I'm paying. Is this the right characterization, and does it make sense to you guys? Okay, awesome.
There was
Yeah.
a
I
yeah,
it's a it's is this question documented if someone wanted to take this issue up?
um I don't think so now. So sorry about that, guys. I
No, that's
like I've
okay.
been
It can be
thinking
done.
I've been thinking about this like in the past few weeks, so it's not there documented as of now.
Hey, sorry, Yashraj, is this just about
Yes.
send fees? Because as we are speaking here, I'm actually working
Yeah.
on extracting a fees section out of the sending page in the daily spending wallet into a separate send fees
Mm.
page that covers everything around send fees. And it gets quite
Yes.
complex because you have Lightning network fees, Lightning
Mm-hmm.
LSP fees, you have on-chain
Mm-hmm.
fees, and the network dynamics around it. and then you have the transaction complexity. There's all kinds of stuff. So we're going to have a dedicated send fees page soon. It sounds
Right.
like this might fit in there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, 100%. There's a question also from Kumliana, and sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly. Are there any specific scenarios in which someone would not want Payjoin to be active in a wallet app? I guess this question's for you, Dan, and Yashraj. Feel free to answer.
It depends what you mean by active. I think you want to have the capability to do it because by communicating off chain, you're going to be able to do more things, you're going to be able to make transactions that do more for you with less data. But there are times where perhaps a receiver wouldn't want to contribute inputs, like if transaction fees were quite high, if there was a very competitive block space market relative to recent history, it wouldn't make sense to do a consolidation in that market environment because it would be expensive.
In that case, if it's more of on the receiver side, should there also be, when he generates its address, is there also an activate Payjoin button there? Because I asked the question because if from the sender side, it's always an advantage if there's no real disadvantage. Why not just put a button in maybe in a general settings and not always on every transaction? But maybe if it's the receiver who can be against it for the reason for the fees.
I think there's one good reason, which is if the receiver's server is not on and the sender tries to make a Payjoin, the typical flow won't have it try to broadcast the original transaction. So the way Payjoin works, there's a PSBT exchange that happens, and the original PSBT, the first request from the sender, is a valid fallback transaction, but that's usually not actually broadcast to the network. That's if the sender doesn't sign the updated Payjoin from the receiver, then the receiver has that as a fallback that they can send. So if the receiver's server is not on, then you would want to shut Payjoin off and make a typical naive spend without contacting that server. Otherwise, you're just going to try to make a connection to that server and it'll fail. That would be the one reason to show an option.
Okay, and can that not be catched like in the logic without the user knowing that the server is that he has to deactivate it?
It could. I like the idea of getting rid of options for users. I think the one time, like the reason you would want it would be if the sender was privacy conscious to the point where they didn't want to make a transaction. If it wasn't a Payjoin, then maybe there would be some optionality, but for most users, you could probably make a sane default where it like tried the server twice, and if it didn't work, it just automatically sent a naive transaction. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, I think Dan, because we like talked about like, taking options away from users, like, and I think this is where like basically any UX implementation can like make a set of decisions that they think is right? Like for example, I could think of that there being a setting with some kind of a default value for the sender, and the setting says that if like the fee rate is like above 100 sats per byte, don't even try it. Like it could be something like that. It could be something like maybe on the like receiver side, it could be I could like choose the receiver could choose to simply not like have the payment link. Basically it does not have a Payjoin endpoint address at all if they don't want to do it, right? And like even the receiver could like have a bunch of settings and a bunch of configurations, and when it comes to how many inputs to contribute, like when to contribute, when to not do that, Like there are a bunch of options, I guess.
I tend to think you should always include the endpoint, because in a high fee environment, even if you're not doing the consolidation, you can still do transaction cut through that saves money. So if some
Yeah.
receiver were to receive Payjoin and then want to pay someone else immediately after, if they knew that at the time they were receiving money, say you had a bill you knew you were going to pay with your next income, then the Payjoin receiver can actually replace the original address from the BIP21 with the one that pays the bill to remove that whole transaction. So what we're talking about is really receiver logic, I think, more than a difference in how invoicing is done or whether the sender should or should not support Payjoin. I think you always, if you can try to communicate, and this is the case in any human interaction, you should try to communicate. But if you have to fall back to non-interactive options, that already exists in the QR code.
Yeah.
I have a comment, more like a suggestion, which has to do more from a security standpoint. The presence of Payjoin acceptability by merchant right now suggests that you are paying into a hot wallet. I mean, the BTC Pay Server implementation makes that very clear that, Payjoin is only offered as an option if you have a hot wallet configured for that particular store. I think this is a potential problem because even if you're using a cold wallet, there's no reason why you can't suggest that you would accept a Payjoin, but not contribute any inputs and just basically forward that transaction on chain. So maybe this is something that, maybe those who are implementing Payjoin functionality into merchant payment processors or, in different e-commerce settings, if that particular software has capabilities for Payjoin acceptance, then there is the potential for it to suggest that it would accept even if you're using a cold wallet, because then you don't signal to other people that, oh, this is a hot wallet, and you're exposing yourself as a potential honeypot for exploitation. Don't know if that makes any sense or if you understand that.
I think
Are
that
you?
makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm not sure that I understood what you said. I think you said something about don't contribute any inputs for the receiver.
No, so what I'm saying is that when you are paying a merchant and you see that that merchant supports Payjoin, the assumption right now, which is largely true, is that the merchant has a hot wallet. So you're paying into a hot wallet, and that could potentially signal that, oh, there are funds in this merchant that could be exploited. In cases where you have instances that only have a cold wallet, so there are no private keys on the server, you don't even have Payjoin support. Like, it's not advertised at all. However, that's not to mean that you can't still signal Payjoin support, except that because it's a cold wallet, it can't contribute any inputs, it won't be able to sign those transactions. And so even if it's not contributing any inputs, if it signals Payjoin, by not contributing any inputs to any transactions that it's receiving, it's still going to work, right? So my suggestion is Payjoin support should be enabled for both hot and cold wallets, even if with the cold wallets, you don't have input contribution. Does that make sense to you, Rashad?
Yeah. How it does.
You can also take a hybrid approach where you forward the majority of your funds into a cold wallet, but you keep maybe 1 or 2 UTXOs hot, and then just automatically in the background, a receiver could consolidate to cold wallets.
Yeah. I think this is something that we have like talked about in the case study itself, where the output that like where uh, where the output that you provide is an output from the cold wallet, like that can be spent by the cold wallet. And so it's just like we call it like cold wallet pack fail, that I keep a minimum amount in my hot wallet, only enough to sign transactions if I have to, but the actual payment goes to the cold wallet.
And also, just because we're coming up at the hour, just a question for Taking Burr and Dami and Joseph and Kumalinia and Plebot. I know you're already in the community, but are you guys also a part of the Bitcoin design community? I'm guessing otherwise you wouldn't have seen the call today.
Personally, I've not joined the community. I just received the newsletter, so that's how I learned about the call.
Super nice. I mean, I'll share the link here in the community because we have a channel in the Discord community that's only dedicated to. I'll just share the link. Oh, I'm now automatically joining. Okay, I'm going to share the link to the design guide, and then on the front page there's a big blue button that says Join Discord. There's an entire channel there dedicated to Payjoin. So, for those of you who are really passionate about this topic and want to continue the conversation with Dan and Yashraj, they both hang out in that channel. So it's a good avenue to dive down. Join the cool guys. Yeah. But yeah, we have just 5 more minutes. I don't know if anyone has any more questions, but that's an open invitation for everyone on the call to join the community. And jump in also the Payjoin channel or any other interest areas that you have, Bitcoin UX wise.
I have a question. Is there a place, is it in that channel that you're talking about, the Payjoin channel? Is that a place where maybe Yashraj research is linked to, where you can read further?
That's a good question. Yashraj's research but I'll let Yashraj answer that as well. At the moment, his research is here in the Bitcoin Design Guide as a case study. I'll link to that so that everyone can have access to that as well. Yeah, there we go. He's already linked it. So yeah, his work is there, but he's incredibly passionate about Payjoin. So if you DM him on Slack, he will. Well, Slack is free, Discord. He will be more than happy to message you and have any conversation you like about Payjoin. Look, he's gonna post his link and conference deck in the Payjoin channel on Discord. Yeah. But yeah, any comments from anyone or anything? I'd like to say a big thank you to Dan and to Yashraj as well, because Yashraj put a lot of work into the case study, and also helping us to get it up into the guide as well, and also for Dan's time, because Dan also contributed to getting the case study live, as well as to the definition, I think, of Payjoin as well in the Bitcoin Design Guide.
It's nice to be appreciated, and huge thanks to you, Mo, too, for organizing this. It's
Oh, it's a pleasure. It was
excellent to
seriously
have
so
this
meant to
niche.
happen. Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
Any final comments?
I'm just going to like quickly summarize how I feel about this is about PayJoin is that what I loved about it, that it is simple. It like breaks like so simplicity is like very important. It makes things easy to understand, easy to implement, right? It like breaks several heuristics, so that is awesome. And we have awesome folks like Dan and the etc pace server guys. I have to repeat that again, right? So Nicholas Dorier and Cooks, they are the fathers of Payjoin and BIP 78, and so we are like trying to build on that. And like in my mind, this like opened up a new avenue when it came to Bitcoin transactions, that now we are suddenly talking about interactive transactions. So it's not just one party doing it. It's like interactive transactions, and that can help with privacy, with with UTX management. And just like today in the Liana wallet call, we like heard about how we can use Payjoin to like keep the uh, keep the relative time lock in shape. And like so we see these use cases for like interactive transactions and for Payjoin like really take shape, and that's awesome. And I'm excited for that.
Really good stuff. I really want to send a one round of applause Yashraj here because of his work. Yeah, good job, really good job, guys. And let's keep the Payjoin channel conversation going in the Discord community, because it feels like there's a lot of conversations to be had around this topic, and quite a few of you who are interested in this topic as well. So yeah, open invitation. Feel free to jump in and continue the conversation in Discord. Yeah, shall we wrap it up?
Wrap it up. Wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you all.
Thanks
Have a
Dan
nice
and
day.
Joshua.
Thanks for
Thank
being
you,
here,
Mo.
everyone.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everyone.
Bye bye.
Hey, make sure to stop the recording.
Yep, I'm gonna stop it. It
Okay.
was literally just